Good stuff. Yeah. So anyway, one of the things I learned, right, was expectations really is one of the things that will eat you up, right? And in fact, the best thing or the best medicine for for expectations is gratitude, right? Meaning that you're just grateful to be able to be. Of course, we all have our aims and aspirations and plans, right, and strategies, right? But I realized that as I let go a lot of the expectations in my life, I could cope with my failures better. I could cope with my shortcomings better. I could cope with things not going my way much better because I felt like, yeah, I mean, at least I'm grateful that I'm trying. At least I'm grateful that I've been given opportunities, whether you fail or lose. Um, that really is the cosmic order of things, right? Sometimes you have assumptions and you have plans, but how do you kind of get to that? Essentially, is that get clarity and journey in that journey, right? And I realized the clarity, guys. I love these guys, but anyway, yeah, the clarity and journey comes right in the fact that when you're grateful, right, the stress, see, stress, worry brings you nowhere, stress brings you nowhere, expectations brings you nowhere. And I've been there, right? And once you shed yourself from the expectations, from the stress, from the worry, by focusing on the gratitude that you have, the fact that we're breathing, the fact that I'm able to try things out, the fact that I've been given the opportunities is in itself a huge blessing, is in itself a very blessing that we have. And so if it jadi, it jadi. If it doesn't, it doesn't. One of my favorite stories on whether things jadi or not jadi or can or cannot. Oh, where did I hear this story? It was about a man in the village with his son. So there's a man in the village. He lives in a small village with his son and his two horses. And one day his horses run away. And the villagers all go, oh, poor old man, right? Now you don't have your horses. And the old man's like, good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? And then next week, what happens is the two horses come back with the friends. And suddenly he's got 10 horses. 8 horses followed the two horses back. And all the villagers, well, the villagers that came by and said, oh, wow, you lucky guy, huh? Very good. Got all these horses now, huh? And the old man's like, yeah, good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? And then next week, what happens as the son was taking care of the horses, the son gets kicked by the horses and breaks his legs and gets paralyzed. In a way, paralyzed, right? He gets crippled. And everyone's like, oh, poor you, your son, oh no, it must be horrible. Old man's like, good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? And then what happens next week was that there was a big like war, civil war between the different villages were happening, and all the young men were enlisted to join the warriors, right, to fight, except for his son. And sadly, all the sons died except for his son. And so the villagers just are like, oh, you're so lucky your son broke his leg and he's at home and he's still alive. Well, good thing, bad thing, who knows, right? And so, yeah, who knows? Sometimes, you might go through failures, you might go through whatever failures it could be, right? Whether or not you try something, it didn't work, or you tried something and someone dies on you. You try something, you get sick, right? You try something, you fall, right? It happens. And I guess the important thing isn't about whether or not you can try and not make mistakes. Everyone will make mistakes one way or another, right? Failures will happen also one way or another, but it's about how you cope with it, how you deal with it, right? And I really learned that if you want the right things to happen to you, you got to do the right things. And so through this book, right, I share with you right here that you can get on NPH. I guess I've done a whole heap of research, as I said, throughout my academic years as well as my own personal time as well. I think I've been obsessed with understanding about the self. And now I learned that for a while I was focused on psychology, and that's why I went into the psychology course in university. But then I realized that being a complete human being, we need to understand that we have our bodies, we have our minds, and we have our soul, right? However you want to equate it together, it's up to you. But I kind of see that the soul is the very thing that kind of like drives us. It's that very source of life, right? And then we have our bodies, right? This vehicle that we've borrowed. In essence, the where if you believe in a creator, which I absolutely believe in intelligent, divine, absolute creator. I call him Allah. You can call it whatever, right? But I absolutely believe in this, and through my research of psychology, but also theology, I went through a phase. I went through a phase where I was just fascinated in learning about the Tao. I learned about the Tao Te Ching. I started getting into Vedic practices and knowledge, and went deep into the Bhagavad Gita. And then I started learning, also reading on books from Sadhguru, and I went to courses, master classes, and all these kind of things, right? And it really did highlight the fact that if you want to do the right things, if you want the right things to happen to you, you got to do the right things for yourself, right? Another cool story on doing the right things. I think there's this man. He likes to go fishing in I think it's Canada where they got the ice fishing, right? And this man, he loves fishing, ice fishing, right? He's been fishing for years, right? He's an old man, and one day so he just they do a little hole in the ice, right? And he starts fishing in there, right? And then one day this young boy comes in, he just comes in and he does the hole as well in the ice, right? Puts in his pole in there, right? And then the man's like sitting there for hours and still hasn't really caught much fish. This boy comes in, he brings his boombox, right? His speakers. He's sitting down there, fishing, listening to music, and the old man's like, "This boy is not getting any fish. No way." And then 10 minutes on, suddenly the boy gets a fish. And the man's like, beginner's luck, right? And 20 minutes later, another fish, and another fish, and another fish. And the man's like, whoa, 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 this can't be right. The boy's like, got music, the fish shouldn't be there. And then he goes there and he talks to the boy. Hey, boy, what's going on? How are you catching all these fishes? And the boy's like, we're going to keep the room. And he was like, what? You're going to keep the room. And he was like, what? He spits out, right, a handful of like worms. And he's like, you got to keep the worms warm. Right? And so that's how he caught the fish, by getting the worms, by keeping the worms warm, right? So in essence, if you're not doing the right things, you're not going to achieve the right things. So I guess I learned in my experience in the journey of my life that I needed to do the right things. I needed to take care of myself, meaning that I needed to take care of my body. I needed to take care of my mind, right? But I also needed to feed and harness my soul, right? And so this is where you do the right things. If you want the right things to happen to you, you want the right results, right? And sometimes the right results might not seem right to you as well. And sometimes in getting the right results, the wrong things happen as well. And that's also normal as well. And that's just fine. But if you want the right things, if there's no way for you to get the right things if you're not doing the right things for yourself, meaning that you're in a good life and you're not exercising well, if you're not keeping your physical health up there, if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, then you're not going to achieve and get to do the things that you hope to achieve, right? You're not going to get the results. Similarly, if you're not reading, if you're not feeding your mind, if you're not equipping yourself the capacity and capabilities to understand how things work, then you're also going to be clueless and not be able to find the steps to get to life, the life that you'd like. But most importantly is feeding the soul. And this is where you could I had a period where I could explain my depression. I'm learning psychology. You can explain the pathways, you can explain the cognitive pathways, you can explain the biological and chemical pathways of how and why we are being the way we are. But it still didn't help me from feeling down and feeling miserable and feeling like the world was going to end, right? Despite understanding counseling, despite understanding CBT, despite understanding and knowing different counseling techniques, right? Therapeutic techniques, psychological therapeutic techniques. I realized that there was more than the psychology that needed to be fed. And that's when I found, as I said, I had a phase where I was really deeply studying the Bhagavad Gita. I was studying the Quran as well. I was studying the Hadith as well. I just finished this amazing book by this guy, Professor Hamka. I just found out that we have some amazing philosophers and thinkers in this region as well. One of the favorite that I guess my recently read, right, was this book called Modern Tasawwuf, which is modern Islamic spirituality, right? And so I guess if you want to take care of yourself, you got to understand yourself, but you also have to understand the different dimensions, right? So I learned for myself at least, right, that I needed to take care of myself, right? I needed to do the right things, right? And that's why I try my best to practice things like prayers, right? Every day I try to pray, try to do the five. I try to do the 5 time prayer. I try to wake up early every morning, right? I try to make my bed every morning, right? All these things play a role. When you make your bed, you'd be surprised how the condition of your room and the condition of your bed correlates with the condition of your mind, right? So I found that, organizing my room, organizing my gear, organizing my stuff helped as well. Meditating was one of the things I think it was one of the best practices that I uncovered, and I started mastering different types of meditation. So the last like 4 years, 3 years, I've been going through all sorts of master classes, going to talk to teachers, going to talk to different people who have the mastery of these things. And so these kind of things have really helped essentially equip myself and getting the right results. It's not like I don't still fail. It's not like things just magically happen right now and suddenly I'm like, I have everything I want in life, right? No, of course not, right? I still have things, I still have challenges, I still have pending issues, I still have emotional turmoils as well, right? There are days that sometimes I wake up and I feel overwhelmed by sadness or overwhelmed by the challenges that I have to go through. There are as well, undeniably, right? However, I am just blessed and grateful that I found methods, at least for myself, at least, to be able to go through those challenges, to be able to maneuver as best as I can in getting the results and the life that I want to live. Right? For me, I've learned that it's not about winning the rat race, right? It's not about having the big cars, the big fat bank account, right? I mean, I'm not saying go broke, right? But I have realized, and I have been there, where you have all the money, you have cars, right? You have big house, right? But also you can also feel absolutely miserable in that period of time, right? Um, but as I said, I kind of found these techniques that has helped me out, right? I am living, Alhamdulillah, right now. You can see, I've spent the last 6 months locking myself down on an island. So the last year, of course, we were all on the same boat. I live in Tamantun as well. I have a house in Tamantun as well, and a really nice apartment there. But I think throughout last year was very difficult as well. We started gravitating all our work online, right? Every work that I was doing with the UN and other work as well was all online. I hadn't seen my colleagues for a year. I hadn't seen them. I had implementing partners doing the projects that we were doing, and I was all just monitoring all that remotely online. And I figured that, hey, since everything's online, why not try and do some work on an island? And I came here last September. Initially, it was just supposed to be a short break, but then I chose to be here, I guess, because it was not easy throughout last year from March to say July, because I was a very active person. I was having a lot of cramps, and because you're cooped up at home and you're stuck at home as well, right? You're just kind of like stuck at home. But I decided, no, let's go try out. And while I was on the island, I realized, hey, I got all the things I want. I got internet. I'm still talking to people. I still managed to do all my meetings on Zoom and Google Meets and all the other platforms as well. I was still doing talks. I was still doing lectures. I was still doing my consultancy work. And so I decided, since home is where the heart is, where the home is, right? I decided, hey, I'm just gonna stick around here. And so 6 months on, I guess now it's like what, March again, right? I'm still here at my resort here at our resort in Kapas, right? And yeah, just living life the best that I can right now. And started making now, I guess, a few other side hustle projects. So side hustling, back, no, not really back to side. So throughout my life, essentially, I've always had a thing, right? Whether or not working for the UN, I was still doing my talks. Even when I was working with the Malay Chamber of Commerce and the Gemilang, I also was having my talks as well. And then on top of that, I was doing voiceovers and always something, right? So at the end of the day, I think in terms of like this as far as side hustling is concerned, I really believe that you, like for me at least, I've been very adamant that you can really do the things that you love. But firstly, you got to find the things that you love, right? And that in itself is a journey. But if you can find the very thing that gives you meaning and gives you joy, whether or not it's an artistic thing, whether or not it's a personal development thing, whether or not it's a sporting thing, whether or not it's a technology thing, whether or not it's a cooking thing, and anything, right? Yeah, I really believe that if you harness the passion, the thing that you love, and put that together with the right techniques, with the right methods, right? And then going out there, because you can't we make things happen if you just stay at home, right? If you go out there and you let your intentions heard, you start relating to people, you start socializing, you start getting to know different people, and then you start connecting the dots, right? It does help to kind of just maneuver that way, you know. And so yeah, here I am now, you know. I sharing with you guys here. I am still going through through the challenges that I am, but I can only be grateful. I can only live with full of gratitude despite all the challenges and heartaches and heartbreaks and failures, right? I have nothing to complain. I have nothing to complain, right? I feel I'm absolutely blessed. I don't have hands, no worries, right? Life is hard, no worries, right? Because at the end of the day, good thing, bad thing, who knows? All right, Vince.
Wow, dude, that is amazing, man. Seriously, I mean, you went on for 1.5 hours, and if only time permit, I would have allowed you to speak the whole day, man.
I
and
could actually. I've done.